I'm the chair of the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, the board for CERM. I'd like to call this meeting of the Application Review Subcommittee together. We have a quorum, and I'm going to ask our Deputy General Counsel, Ben Huang, to call the roll and during the meeting to take whatever votes are required. Thank you.
Dan Bernal.
Present.
Maria Bonneville.
Present.
Leandra Clark-Harvey. Anne-Marie Dulege. Mark Fisher-Colby.
Here.
Isabel Derone.
Here.
Fred Fisher.
Here.
Elena Flowers.
Present.
David Higgins.
Present.
Vito Imbasiani.
Here.
Stephen Julesgaard.
Present.
Rich Lahara.
Present.
Lauren Miller-Rogan.
Here.
Joe Panetta.
Here.
Marvin Southard.
Here.
Carol Watson. Kevin Zhu.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you very much, Ben. So our first order of business is a consideration of applications that have been submitted in response to clinical trial stage projects in the announcements for CLIN 1 and 2. I'm going to ask Haley Lim, I see you there. You can make the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to the board. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Good?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll take you through the slides. Good morning, everyone. As always, we begin with our mission statement, accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. The current clinical budget status for the fiscal year has a total allocation of $252 million. $168 million has already been approved by this group here. And today's total amount requested across the 4 applications is $35.2 million. As a reminder of sort of the structure of the program, the scientific scoring system for the clinical program is a scores of 1, 2, and 3. A 1 is a recommendation for funding. A 2 application is not recommended at this time, but the applicant can return with a resubmission and should have sort of recommendations that can be revised and addressed in a resubmission. A score of a 3 is a do not recommend for funding. And the panel believes that the application is sufficiently flawed that it doesn't warrant funding and the same project cannot be resubmitted for at least 6 months. The criteria that are used to score the 1, 2, and 3 are as follows. Number 1, sort of the overall value and impact of the project. Does it have that? Number 2 is the rationale sound. So does it have the data to support moving forward? 3 is a project well planned and designed. So is the project that the applicant is seeking funding for have the right activities to reach the goal for that particular call and PA? Number 4, is the project feasible? So do they have the people and all of the pieces in place to execute? And number 5, does the project uphold principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? At CERM here, we score a separate score for diversity, equity, inclusion in addition to the scientific score. The DEI score is a score of 0 to 10. 10 being the most outstanding response, and sort of a scale between that. The DEI score is scored by all GWG board members with no conflict. The composition of the group that scores both the scientific and the DEI scores is as follows. We have up to 15 scientific grants working group members that provide a scientific score on all the applications, and they evaluate according to their disease area expertise, regulatory, manufacturing, and product development. We have our grants working group board members who provide a DEI evaluation and provide a patient insight onto the applications, and they provide DEI scores on all applications and suggested scientific scores. And finally, we also have specialist non-voting scientists that we call in on an ad hoc basis for applications for which we don't have expertise coverage within our grants working group. And moving on to the applications today. Oh, how come my slides are not advancing? Oh, jumped. Okay. So the first application up for discussion today is CLIN 215343. This is a phase 1 study for evaluating the safety and efficacy of an allogeneic cell therapy in subjects with clear cell renal cell carcinoma. And the therapy is an allogeneic approach of CAR T cells. The indication, again, is as indicated in the title, is for advanced and metastatic clear cell renal cell carcinoma. And the goal for this project is to complete the phase 1b trial. Funds requested from CIRM is an even 15 million, and the applicant is co-funding a little bit over 42.6 million. A little bit more about this application. So a background on renal cell carcinoma is one of the most common types of kidney cancer in adults. The current standard of care includes surgery and immunotherapy, but there's limited options beyond that for patients when or if the cancer reoccurs. For the proposed therapy, there's a couple modifications in the therapy that aim to improve the tumor killing by the patient T cells. And if it's successful, it's hopefully can be applied to similar approaches in other cancers. In addition, this is an off-the-shelf, or this would be an off-the-shelf therapy, which could potentially shorten the timeline to treatment from the to improve the patient access, as compared to autologous treatments where the cells have to be harvested and then prepared for treatment, which takes a longer timeline. And this project is a genetic manipulation of T cells, which is why it falls under CIRM's purview. There are currently no CIRM portfolio projects in the translational and clinical stage that address kidney cancer. And the applicant team has not received prior CIRM funding. So in summary, the recommendation from the grants working group was a unanimous vote of a recommendation for funding of Tier 1. The DEI score on this application was a 7, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the grants working group for a total CIRM award amount ask of 15 million. Pass it back. Oh, there's a question. Oh, I can't hear you, Jules. Stephen, yes.
Stephen Jules Guard.
Yes.
Steve.
Oh, you're muted again.
Okay. Sorry about that. No, it's just a question. It has to do with the very last part of this. The CIRM award amount is 15 million.
Mhm.
But there's an asterisk to say that the final award amount shall not exceed this amount and may be reduced on CIRM's final assessment of allowable costs and activities. So this appears to be an out-of-state company based on, without knowing anything more, but my assessment of what's being presented. And what they have is they have a manufacturing facility, at least for clinical material in California. And 2 of the 17 sites are purported to be California sites for the clinical studies. So that's their connection to California. So
no, I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is, as far as I know, it is a California entity.
Okay. What would be helpful I think in these presentations is to designate whether they are California based, that is their headquarters are in California, or whether they're not. Because the little bit that I read was they were going to manufacture here and they were going to do 2 of 17 clinical trials here. And I just wanted to be sure that, that as I understand it, that whatever we pay them is for their activity in California and not for activity outside of the state.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could start adding that to the slides. I'll have to think about the best spot maybe, but definitely can do that.
Yeah, I just, I don't know if any of the others that are coming up, the next one may be a non-California company, but as we begin to focus on what we're going to fund in the future, once we get past, the end of May or whatever, I think one of the things we ought to take a look at is the degree of California connection that the applicant has in our consideration of how to fund them. because in some cases it's a little more tenuous than in others. That's the basis for my question as I'm starting to think about where we might be going here.
Yeah.
Steve, sorry, Haley. Steve, this is Raphael. And in the program announcement, there's clear delineation as to which costs are associated for example, if it's a non-California applicant, but it's generally for activities conducted in California or for California patients. So there is some guidance on that, and I'm happy to send that to you.
And
Yeah.
that's the money they're asking for, is that amount. Then they say, okay, well, we're going to spend $15 million in California. That's how they make the application.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of give a little bit more insight into the overall process for these clinical applications, right now the current process is every application that comes through and goes to the grants working group has a first look by a grants management team, and they do a initial budget review of all the applications to just take a look that everything looks, sort of squared away, I guess,
Right.
to be general about it in terms of what they're asking for being overall, within the allowable costs for what's in our PAs in terms of California organizations and what they are allowed to request funding for, and non-California and what they're allowed, that sort of thing. So there are initial checks on that, but like the asterisk indicates, which we have on every application, all of the funding approved here in this committee is subject to the final contracting with each of those applicants or actual awardees at this point, where the grants management will continue working with those applicants and making final decisions on whether all of those activities are allowable and fall under CIRM funding.
Great.
This is Leandra. I'm on my cell phone, can't find the raise my hand function. I apologize. I'm in transit. Really appreciate the question and comment brought up by Steve. And on that, I appreciate the answers. And I wonder if it would be helpful to CIRM reviewers and staff, as well as the committee, if we actually ask them to share how or share the specific California impact. It's one thing to say we expect you to use it, and then having CIRM staff having to do the checks and balances. What if we ask them upfront as part of the application to identify? Maybe it's an extra question, considering we want California impact. Can you explain how these funds will be utilized specifically in the state? If there is a question that does this already, then my comment is moot. But if not, it might just be something to consider.
Thank you.
And just I'm sorry, but one follow-up. My question is probably more future related than anything. And I think one of the things, again, it's just a suggestion on my part, that we think about going forward is whether we want to consider having a stronger filter for these applications related to their association with California, so that we have certain expectations that have to be met in order for it to be funded as a California project. And I'm not suggesting that we do anything about these, but it's more future looking, because I know we have funded things in the past where only part of the work the companies are not California companies, and the only part of the work is being done in California. And I wonder if we want to continue that or not. But anyway, I don't want to have a major discussion. It's just, these begin to beg the questions from my point of view. So,
JT?
Steve, just 2 seconds very quickly. That sort of thing is one of very many considerations that are looked at in the whole reprioritization process. So thank you for that input.
sure.
Barring any other questions, the chair will entertain a motion.
Haley, was there a conflict slide?
Yes.
Maria Bonneville.
No, not this one.
For this
Oh,
one,
it
yes.
is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, not this one, the other one.
They put you first in front of us.
I love it. Thank you.
I'll move approval.
Mark Southard will second.
Marv Sufferin seconded, okay. So Deputy Counsel Hang can call the roll.
Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Leandra Clark Harvey,
Aye.
Mark Fisher Colby,
Yes.
Isabel Jerome, Isabel Jerome.
I will come back to you, Isabel.
Fred Fisher,
Aye.
Elena
I'm
Flower.
sorry, I was on mute. Yes,
Okay,
sorry,
thank
Fred.
you. I got Fred's vote. Elena Flowers,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Imbasciani,
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Lauren, you are on mute.
Joe Panetto,
Yes.
Marvin Southard. Marvin Southard,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
And Marie Juliet voted yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Is there anyone else on there on the line that did not have their vote recorded? Lauren did. I think it was,
Okay, she did, okay.
Lauren, one last call?
um,
Okay, it's okay, the motion carries.
okay, great.
Can we move first?
So, is there any member of the public that would like to address CLIN 215343?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Okay, Haley, can you take us to the next application?
Yes, thank you. For the next application, we have one conflict with the board member, and the application is CLIN 215282. Let's see if I can get through this alphabet here. RPE-SC, RPE therapy for dry age-related macular degeneration. And this therapy is a retinal pigment epithelial stem cell derived RPE cells. The indication is for dry age-related macular degeneration, and the goal for this project is to complete a phase 1/2A trial. The funds requested for this application are just over 4 million with a co-funding of 3.3 million. A little bit more about this application. So dry age-related macular degeneration is essentially a blinding disease over the long term and is due to the loss of the retinal pigment epithelial cells. There are a few standard of care treatments available, but all of them at this point slow progression, but do not improve and or restore vision. The value of the proposed therapy is to replace the cells, the RPE cells that have been lost due to the disease. And there is some early evidence that this therapy has the potential to improve vision in patients with dry AMD. And in terms of the relevance to CIRM, this project, the therapy is composed of cells derived from retinal pigment epithelial stem cells. Similar CIRM portfolio projects. So there are several projects that are also related to age-related macular degeneration of sort of different stages. And in terms of the indication as well as the awards, we have a couple of TRAN 1 awards and one CLIN 1 and one CLIN 2. The prior funding to the CIRM applicant team they've not received a prior CIRM award. And the recommendation of the grants working group was a unanimous recommendation to fund of a tier 1 with 15 votes, and the overall diversity, equity, inclusion score was 8 from the board members, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the grants working group for a total amount requested today of just over 4 million. Thank you. Pass it back. Dr. Invasiani?
What was the conflict on this one again?
Isabel Durand.
Isabel, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions? We technically should start with a motion to consider. And then any questions or points of information can be directed toward the team.
Moved. Marv Southard.
Marv, you're making a motion to what?
Consider as you suggested.
Fine. Yes. Just want to clear. Thank you.
Second, Leandra Clark Harvey.
Thank you, Leandra. The floor is open to discussion from members of the board. Is there any member of the general public that would like to comment on this?
There are no hands
There are
raised.
no hands raised. Then I think it's up to you to take the roll.
Thank you. Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey,
Aye.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Aye.
Mark Fisher Colby,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Imbasiani,
Yes.
Stephen Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Lauren Miller-Rogan,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Marvin Southard,
Yes.
Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Good. Thank you. Haley, the next application 15311.
All right, 15311. We've got a couple of folks that are conflicted on this one. Dan, just for the sake of no confusion here, Dan, Isabel, Elena, and Chris. All right. So the application again is CLIN 2 15311, a phase 1/2A study to evaluate the efficacy of a gene therapy with standard of care therapy in newly diagnosed high-grade glioma. Therapy is a retroviral vector, which converts a prodrug to an anti-cancer drug. And the indication is, again, a newly diagnosed high-grade glioma. And the goal of this project is to complete a phase 1/2A trial. Funds requested from CIRM are 11.8 million, just over that, and there is no co-funding from this applicant. A little bit more about the project. So high-grade gliomas are the most common primary brain tumor in adults, and they have overall poor prognosis. The current standard of care is surgery to remove the tumor, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. And the median overall survival with the standard of care treatment is less than 15 months. The proposed therapy aims to sort of activate an anti-cancer drug only in cancer cells and work in combination with standard of care treatments. So the aim here is to provide localized killing of the cancer cells, and ultimately could increase the survival for patients. And the relevance to CIRM here is that the therapy is a gene therapy approach. Similar CIRM portfolio projects. So we have quite a bit of funding in the CLIN 2 clinical trial for similar brain cancers. They are all phase 1s, and they are actually all autologous CAR T approaches. The CIRM, the applicant team has received prior CIRM funding, and both of those were much earlier stage research, and one of them was related to the current award, and that involves the same virus. The grants working group recommended this application for funding with a unanimous vote of 15 votes for a tier 1. The board members scored this application on DEI at an 8, and the CIRM team concurs with the recommendation to fund for the total award amount of 11.8 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley, for the presentation. The chair will entertain from any member of the Application Review Subcommittee that is not in conflict a motion to fund.
Marv Southern makes the motion to fund.
Thank you, Marvin.
Leandra Clark Harvey seconds.
Thank you, Leandra. Floor is open to discussion or questions from board members. Okay, quiet. And so I'd like to invite any member of the public with opinions on this application to come forward.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, then Ben, we can proceed to the formal vote.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey,
Yes.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colby,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Imbasciani,
Yes.
Stephen Julesgaard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Marvin Southard,
Yes.
Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Great, thank you, Ben. And Haley, we can move on to CLIN 14852. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have one conflict here with Isabel. CLIN 114.852. So this one is IND enabling studies for a second generation vaccine targeting glioblastoma. And this therapy is a vaccine designed to enhance the immune response against tumors expressing EGFR-B3. The indication here is glioblastoma, and the goal of this project is to have an approved IND from the FDA to initiate the phase 1 trial. The funds requested on this application is 4.367 million, and no co-funding is provided from the applicant for this particular application. A little bit more background on this one. So similar to the prior application, actually. So it's also a brain cancer application, and it's a critical unmet need. It's a common brain tumor, and the survival rate is very low. The current standard of care, as I just mentioned as well, is similar here. So surgery to remove the tumor, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. And despite this, the survival is still low. The proposed therapy might improve the survival for patients with glioblastoma that express this marker. And in terms of the relevance to CIRM here, it's a vaccine that targets cancer stem cells. Again, this slide might look familiar to you. It's the same one that I presented a few minutes ago for the other application. The CIRM portfolio projects are the same. These are the 5 phase 1 trials that CIRM is currently funding for glioblastoma. The applicant has received prior CIRM funding for the DIS2 and in the translational, and the translational award is would be a direct progression event if this award was funded. The grants working group did not recommend this application for funding and had a unanimous vote to score of a tier 3, warranting no funding at this time, and the recommendation to resubmit cannot resubmit for at least 6 months. The DEI score from the board members was an 8, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the grants working group to not fund this application for the award amount of 4.367 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Board, as is customary, will entertain a motion from board members. It will be followed by comments from board members and then followed by comments from the general public. The chair would like to hear a motion from the board members.
Fred Fisher moves not to fund Clan 14852.
Thank you, Fred Fisher.
Our Southern seconds.
And we have a second, which opens the floor to conversation from the board. Discussion and questions.
Fred has his hand raised.
What?
Fred.
Fred does. I'm sorry, can't see that. Thank you. Fred, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so not specific to this proposal, but when I see a long list of other CERM activities, it raises the question in my mind, which I'm gathering will be addressed by the group looking at prioritization. Whether or not we will entertain capping proposals based on the number of current CERM funded projects for the same indication. So just putting that out there for that group to mull on. I'm not suggesting one way or another, but I think it's probably worthy of a conversation.
Thank you, Fred. I think the Mullers are in the room and will take note of that. So any other
new
board
name
member?
for that group.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I also.
Vice Chair Bonneville, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay, absolutely. I think it's also important to understand a list of projects doesn't really tell us how those projects are doing. So having a list that allocates money towards a specific disease indication does not necessarily give us an idea of how those programs are progressing and whether or not we're making headway in those programs. So I think moving forward after we've determined prioritization or you know, the changing the funding models or whatever might come of it, I think that list might be expanded or we might take a different approach to it in order to give the board a bigger picture as to what's going on specifically.
Thank you. Do you see any other hands from board members?
No.
No. Okay, then I can open the floor to any member of the general public that would like to address the board. It's our tradition. Go ahead.
All right, Dr. Wong, you'll have 3 minutes. I will keep time. So as soon as the clock ends, I will ask you to stop.
Oh, can I make another comment though, strange to that? We do have progress on a translation one that's not reflected. We have a publication as well as 2 patents. I noticed Dr. Lamb mentioned for other CERM funded awards, their progress. So I feel that's very important that we did accomplish something with that money. Okay, so now I'd like to start my public comments. So thanks for the opportunity to address the board today. I've sent in a very lengthy rebuttal to the previous review. And the reason is that we felt extremely compelled based on those reviews to respond because we feel that there's many important aspects were overlooked. In fact, actually, we can pretty much negate any criticism that was offered. And I really hope that you can take a look at it because it's very comprehensive. But today I only have 3 minutes or maybe less now. And I'm just going to highlight particular aspects that illustrate why we don't feel this is an accurate review. First of all, with regards to rationale, there's a question regarding the presence and usefulness of EGFR3 in glioblastoma. First of all, we were funded by the Translation 1 Award a few years ago. And then very interestingly, just 3 months ago, the GWG reviewed an application on targeting EGFR3 in glioblastoma stem cells. There was no problems with reviewing that at that time, yet in our application, there's a question now. So that is unclear why that happened. There's another question rationale if the vaccine has any effect on cancer stem cells. That is presented in figure 6 in the application. We also cite 5 other studies, 3 of which are clinical trials which show an effect of the vaccine on cancer stem cells. So again, that information is overlooked. With regards to plan design and also rationale, there's an enormous question about our toxicology plan. I want to point out that I am the first holder of the IND on the original vaccine, so I have extensive experience on that. As pointed out, we collaborated with Celldex, which is the company sponsor that now holds the IND. We have their protocol. We are using the same CRO, so that plan made total sense. In fact, when the FDA reviewed our pre-IND request, they felt that our prior experience was sufficient and our plan was good, so they didn't have any problems with that. So I'm not sure where these comments from the reviewers come up regarding our toxicology. And then there is a question buying the mass spectrometer that is really more to facilitate our work. We could easily delete that request at no impact to our work. That would bring our total project cost down to 3.4 million, inclusive of IDCs, probably the most economical project that you'll see presented. And then finally, with regards to impact, there's a question about whether or not this vaccine is going to work. And I want to illustrate that we really are on the cusp of success with this vaccine. So first of all, this is a second generation vaccine. This enhances proteasomal processing. We made a major discovery that was published in Science Translational Medicine to figure out how to do that. I do want to bring up, if people could look at figure 4 in the my rebuttal, those two figures show clinical success for the prior version of the vaccine. We can.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wong, time is up.
Okay, so I should.
You finish the sentence, please?
Okay, so those are successful clinical trials that we can replicate with our second generation vaccine. Because it's a more robust version, we really feel that we're going to have success on it. So again, we're negating what the reviewers mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is there any other member of the public that I can't see?
No, there are no other hands raised.
Okay,
so
yes, Ben.
so
please.
this is a motion for Clin 14852 to not fund.
So I guess you should explain what a yes vote means.
So a yes vote would be not to fund this project. And then a no vote would put us in a situation where we would probably need another motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so Dan Bernal.
Oops.
East Africa.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Try that again, Dan. Dan, we're having trouble with your reception. I'm hearing a voice that's not yours.
Yes, that is not coming from me. My vote is aye.
Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey,
Aye.
Anne Marie Duliege,
Aye.
Mark Fisher.
Aye.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Imbasciani,
Yes.
Stephen Julesgard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Marvin Southard, Marv.
I said yes.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Kevin Zhu,
Aye.
the motion passes.
Okay, I'm gonna thank Haley and the entire grants review team for all of the work that went into evaluating these applications and for your presentation, Haley. Thank you. And thanks, Ben, for doing the housekeeping aspects of this. And thank the members of the public for their participation. We have another item. Are there any general comments that any board members want to make on the application review process? Nothing. Is there any member of the public that would like to make any comments? Any member of the general public would like to make a comment about today's meeting or about any item that was not on today's agenda? Hearing none, I thank you all for your participation. The meeting is adjourned.